Hello, everyone from Newfoundland and Labrador. Sorry, I have to scroll back up to the top of my screen now. Sorry. My name is Janet Herron, and I am an Alumni Engagement Officer at Memorial and your host for today's event. I'm here with Dr. Jane Gosine, a professor in the School of Music, cross-appointed to the Faculty of Medicine's Division of Community Health and Humanities, and Memorial alumnus physiotherapist Rochelle Ryan, who received her Bachelor of Kinesiology in 2008, who has a clinical interest in cardiorespiratory physiotherapy and is a volunteer with the Better Breathing Choir, of which we are going to learn more about later. I know those of you attending can't see who else is in the room for our event, but we have lots of people here. We have over 150 registrants, and we have got 35 people watching right now and more joining every minute. So we are absolutely delighted about that. We will begin today's event, as always, with a land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that the lands on which Memorial University's campuses are situated are in the traditional territories of diverse Indigenous groups, and we acknowledge with respect the histories and cultures of the Beothuk, Mi'kmaq, Innu, and Inuit of this province. We encourage everyone to reflect on these lands from where you are located and the Indigenous peoples for whom these lands are traditional territory. At the Office of Alumni Engagement, we are focused on offering many ways for you to connect with Memorial from anywhere in the world. And we're working diligently to foster more opportunities for alumni to celebrate their connections with Memorial and with each other. MUNalum 101 was born out of the need to reach out to alumni during the first few months of the pandemic. It has since evolved to become a cornerstone of our alumni engagement activities, offering the latest information on key topics from Memorial University's own experts. Embarking on new and exciting ways to build relationships within our Memorial community is vital to our evolution as an institution. Please consider getting involved with our programming. You can be a mentor with 10,000 Coffees, discover opportunities to meet up with expats through Global NL, and our online book club Coastlines features a stellar selection of Newfoundland and Labrador authors, most of whom are also Memorial alumni. And you can find more details on all of these programs on our website, www.mun.ca/alumni. Thank you so much for joining us today for our discussion on how group singing can contribute to better health, including both psychosocial and physiological benefits. Just a few housekeeping issues. A brief Q&A will follow the presentation. I will be monitoring the Q&A function, which you'll find at the bottom right-hand side of your screen. So please try to keep your questions short, and I encourage everyone to post questions as soon as possible. Please don't leave them to the last minute. Attendees are not able to unmute their microphones or turn on their video, but you can communicate with other attendees through the chat, and you can also enable closed captioning at the bottom of the right-hand side of your screen if you'd like to do that. We are streaming live, but this session is also being recorded, and all those who registered will receive a link to the event in a follow-up email. So it is my great pleasure to officially introduce our special guest today. Dr. Jane Gosine is a professor in the School of Music and cross-appointed to Community Health and Humanities at the Faculty of Medicine at Memorial University. She teaches courses in musicology in the School of Music and supervises students within the Faculty of Medicine on projects related to arts and health. Her research includes the study of 17th century French music and projects related to music and health, with a focus on group singing and well-being and the role of the arts in social prescribing. Jane is also the co-founder and director of the Better Breathing Choir, a choir designed to support people living with respiratory disease and those interested in improving their breathing through singing. She also serves as a consultant musicologist to music ensembles in Europe and North America on issues related to Renaissance and Baroque performance practices and enjoys playing viol concert music. Rochelle Ryan is a clinical physiotherapist with Eastern Health, She holds a bachelor's degree in kinesiology and exercise science from Memorial and a master's degree in physical therapy from the University of Toronto. She has a strong clinical interest in cardiorespiratory physiotherapy and is an active volunteer with the Better Breathing Choir. Now I will turn over the presentation duties to Jane and Rochelle. Just going to load up the presentation. And there it is. And Jane, you are now the presenter, and I'm going to mute my audio.
Thank you, and thank you all for joining us today. Increasing evidence shows that singing has the potential to benefit our health from a psychological, emotional, social, physiological, cognitive, and behavioral perspective, with a positive impact on quality of life. Singing for Health groups support people living with various health conditions such as Parkinson's disease, lung disease, mental health problems, cancer, aphasia, and dementia, using what's often termed a health by stealth approach, where health benefits surreptitiously occur while you're having fun doing something else, in this instance, singing. It's a bit like sneaking extra vegetables into your family's meals and no one noticing but everyone enjoying the food, or playing upbeat music so that you exercise for longer and don't notice the pain. Vocal warm-ups and songs are chosen with particular therapeutic goals in mind to support psychological, emotional, physiological, and social well-being. Daisy Fancourt, author of a World Health Organization report on the arts and health, commented in an interview that it's critical that we stop seeing the arts as an add-on and start to see them as absolutely fundamental to healthy lives. Government, health, and social organizations, including the World Health Organization, have called for the arts to be better integrated into healthcare, acknowledging the important role they play in the promotion, prevention, management, and treatment of illness. In the UK, many health groups for singing are part of social prescribing schemes. So just briefly, what do we mean by social prescribing? The Health Accord of Newfoundland and Labrador defines social prescribing as a means of enabling health professionals to refer people to a range of local non-clinical services, including social events, fitness classes, and social services. It allows non-medical treatment options for the myriad primary care illnesses. It's also used in health promotion and disease prevention. It's a holistic, asset-based approach to healthcare that focuses on health rather than illness and strengths rather than weakness. Group singing fits well into this model of health. It's cost-effective, non-invasive, inclusive, and sustainable. With the Health Accord mentioning social prescribing, perhaps we can look forward to singing on prescription in the province in the near future. But first, let's dispel a myth about singing. While many of you may be joining today and you may already enjoy singing, some of you may think of yourselves, however, as non-singers, and so be questioning how singing could have a positive impact on your health. Perhaps you even have negative associations with singing. But with few exceptions, as long as your vocal cords work, you can alter the pitch, tone, and rhythm of your voice so you can sing. Whether you sing in a group or alone in the shower, at a place of worship or a friend's party, driving your car or doing housework. The biggest barrier to people participating in singing activities is a mistaken belief that some people are singers and others are non-singers. But this binary distinction is a cultural and social construct that equates being a singer with having a particular degree of talent and often a desire to perform, rather than thinking of singers as being represented across a broad musical spectrum. In fact, for most of human history, singing has been a non-competitive, non-judgmental, communal activity, something everybody does. If you want to feel satisfied and comfortable singing in a group, then you simply need to find a group that matches your expectations, abilities, and musical preferences. That might be an elite choir performing on stages around the world, or a non-auditioned group focused on singing for fun, where no previous singing experience is needed, where you can learn new skills in a supportive environment. Or it might be a group of friends or family singing together for relaxation or celebration, where the process of being together and singing is more important than the final product of a performance. Today, we're talking about singing across a broad musical spectrum, since the health benefits from singing exist along the continuum of development and ability. Oops, well, I've got to try and find my mouse. There you go. As the author of a recent BBC article commented, whether you have the voice of a songbird or sound like some ball bearings in a blender, singing can have remarkably positive effects. Over the past 2 years, you may have seen some of the powerful images of people singing from their balconies during lockdown or singing in war-torn countries. At times when people may be at loss for words, they sing. We've been reminded of how singing can provide solace. And what has been striking about these images is that they're of ordinary people, often singing spontaneously and in everyday spaces. Around the world and for thousands of years, singing has been an integral part of people's everyday lives, of defining who we are as individuals, as well as collectively as communities. It's still very much part of the everyday fabric of communal life in many places. Singing creates bonds between people. Think how we still sing national anthems together, or 100,000 soccer fans unite in singing their team song. Or on a smaller scale, how we use singing for mother-infant bonding or lullabies. It's used to calm, energize, and distract, to celebrate and mourn, to affect our voting and purchasing choices, to express emotion, educate, entertain, and increase work productivity. Singing's a free, accessible, multimodal, and embodied activity, a fundamental attribute of being human beings, a part of our early evolutionary development. Some researchers refer to our brain being hardwired to sing. Our response to music, however, is both personal and context-specific. So the type of music that you might use for one person may create a positive effect, and that for another, a negative. The oldest known musical instruments are believed to date from at least 30,000 years ago, and singing from at least 700,000 years ago. Earliest evidence suggests that singing was used within the context of communication, social bonding, healing, and ritual. It's been a part of human existence for a very long time. The Greek god Apollo was both the god of music and medicine. The Greek philosopher Plato recommended that mothers sing to their babies and referred to music as medicine of the soul. The composer William Byrd wrote in 1588 that singing is good to preserve the health of man. It doth strengthen all parts of the breast and doth open the pipes. It is a singular good remedy for a stuttering and stammering in the speech. And we'll come back to this idea of how singing helps breathing and stuttering later. While writers have discussed the health benefits of singing since antiquity, developments in science and technology have provided us with ways to see how the body responds to singing through fMRIs and other brain imaging, as well as through analysis of biomarkers. So what's going on in the brain when we're singing? David Levitin, in his book, This Is Your Brain on Music, explains that almost every region of the brain is involved when we're engaged in a musical activity such as singing. So let's think about what we do when we're singing in a group. We hear the introduction to a familiar song, and immediately we recognize and remember it. Perhaps it reminds us of someone special or an important event, and so it may also elicit an emotional response. We read the lyrics and maybe some sheet music. We prepare to sing, taking a deep breath, adjusting our posture, and then we sing. We may add some synchronized movement, swaying or clapping or tapping our toes in time to the music and in synchrony with those around us. As we sing, We're listening to our own voice and those of others. We're processing and responding to the different pitches, rhythm, and maybe some harmony. In going through the process of singing a familiar song, we will have used the auditory, visual, cognitive, memory, motor functions, and emotional processing regions of the brain, which may suggest why and how singing has the potential to play a significant role in the context of health. But before going on further, I want to draw your attention to the role played by music therapists who often use singing within the context of healthcare. The Canadian Association of Music Therapists defines music therapy as a discipline in which credentialed professionals use music purposefully within therapeutic relationships to support development, health, and well-being. They use music, including singing, in clinical, community, and private settings with individuals and groups across the lifespan from newborn babies to end-of-life care to support people living with the full range of health conditions. Today, we're not talking specifically about music therapy. I'm not a music therapist, though I have collaborated with music therapists in my work. And there's certainly an overlap between what we're talking about and music therapy. But our focus is more on how individuals and community groups use singing indirectly for improved well-being. Research from diverse disciplines such as musicology, psychology, physiotherapy, occupational therapy, speech-language pathology, neuroscience, medicine, nursing, public health, they all enable us to better understand how singing, particularly group singing, can positively impact our health. Findings from studies show physiological changes after singing, such as the increase in endorphins, an increase in oxytocin levels, and an increase in the release of dopamine. Conversely, singing can lead to a decrease in cortisol levels, serving as a stress or anxiety inhibitor or regulator. Singers often feel relaxed, uplifted, or energized after singing. You may be familiar with that singing high or goosebumps while you sing in harmony. Studies have found an improved immune response after singing and a positive effect on pain threshold, so we can tolerate pain better. Singing can improve cardiorespiratory function and improve concentration and memory. Vocal and physical warm-ups and synchronized movement with singing can help with posture, balance, coordination, and gait. This is also the basis for the Dancing with Parkinson's programs, where rhythmic entrainment is used as a cueing technique. Studies have shown that even thinking about a song can improve gait. Singing can also be beneficial in helping improve communication, such as with voice production and volume, or by decreasing a tremor, a stammer, or a stutter. For example, someone living with aphasia, such as after a stroke, brain injury, or with dementia, who has challenges with speech, may still be able to sing. Melodic intonation therapy is used as a one-on-one intervention by music therapists and speech-language pathologists to improve a person's ability to communicate. And current research, including the SingWell project with which I'm involved, is examining how group singing may also be beneficial for people with communication challenges. There's still a lot to be learned here, as there's debate amongst researchers and practitioners over the exact relationship between singing and speech in terms of brain function, whether processes in the brain are shared by both speech and singing, or whether the brain engages specific and different areas of the brain for singing and language. So coming back to William Byrd's comment about singing helping with stuttering and stammering, researchers have suggested various theories for why someone who speaks with a stutter loses it when they sing. Some argue that singing uses a different part of the brain from that affected by a stutter, or that singing uses the vocal cords, tongue, lips, and mouth in a different way when singing, or that singing helps because it's more predictable than a two-way spoken conversation. And just as a little note, for anyone interested, SingWell is currently looking for participants for a virtual choir for people who stutter. The deadline to submit your video is 16th of May at the very latest, and there's information on this slide if you are interested in participating. Group singing is often used within dementia care, someone may still be able to sing familiar songs and learn new ones, even though communication through speech may be challenging. Singing can trigger memories and emotions as well as language. Singing serves as an equalizer, a shared activity for someone living with dementia and family members and caregivers, a reminder of what that person was before, and so a normalizing and a positive activity. In the UK, there's a move to try to have a choir in every care home in the country, including many residents living with dementia. As Rochelle will talk about a little later, singing can improve breath awareness and control, as well as help improve respiratory muscles. Group singing has been shown to increase the rate of social bonding, the icebreaker effect, so that singing bypasses the need for people to have the sort of knowledge that we usually want about a person as we get to know them. These findings have been linked with a possible evolutionary theory that early humans needed to work together as a group in order to ensure their survival, and so they sang in order to help with bonding and protecting the group. In one study that I did with a choir for mothers of children receiving care at a hospice, the choir members talked about how the choir facilitated social bonding, with one choir member saying, "After coming to the hospice for many years, I always found the social events quite uncomfortable, and nobody really knew each other, and it wasn't like you would just go up and talk to strangers. The choir for me has broken down barriers. It has given people the opportunity to get to know each other through singing, chatting, and of course cake." And as with many health choirs, sharing food is a really important part of the choir experience and its impact on well-being, and this is certainly the case with the Better Breathing Choir. Stella's Circle Inclusion Choir here in St John's includes a meal for choir members, a way in which singing and sharing food creates a sense of belonging. Choir members refer to feeling a part of the family and having an equal voice. Singing provides a voice for vulnerable or marginalized groups. If you've heard the Inclusion Choir sing, they share powerful messages about social justice within the context of singing together. By giving people a voice that is heard, singing can build confidence, self-esteem, a sense of purpose, respect, and community, with the impact going far beyond the choir session. Researchers have shown how synchrony in music can lead to greater empathy, trust, and cooperation. And studies indicate that group singing can induce a state of flow, that feeling in the zone, where we're focused on an activity that is challenging yet manageable. Even the least confident singer can feel supported within the singing group, enveloped by a collective wave of sound where individual voices mix to create something bigger and outside of ourselves. It's something we really miss in the online singing environment. Singing together in a group can provide a way of redefining ourselves in a positive way, of shifting the focus of our identity away from a sense of loss or something negative to something more positive. A member of the Singing with Parkinson's group in Toronto said, "At this point, I don't feel like my Parkinson's defines me as much as it used to. Now that I've been singing with the group for a while, I feel that I'm also a singer who is a part of a vibrant community." A member of the Better Breathing Choir said, "It makes a COPD person feel like a person again." And the parent of a child in Shalloway's neurodiverse choir, Louder, commented that, "I know that my daughter has found her tribe." The Better Breathing Choir was formed in 2016 by Kaylin Thompson and myself. Kaylin is a MUN music graduate and was a medical student when we formed the choir as a pilot study looking into the potential benefits of singing for people living with chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, COPD. The choir is now open to anyone wishing to improve their breathing through singing and gentle exercises in an inclusive and welcoming environment. There are no auditions and no previous singing experiences needed. There's no need to read music and no cost to join. Sessions are currently held online using Zoom, and in-person sessions were held at the School of Music at MUN. In the future, we plan to offer both in-person and online sessions. The choir benefits from having students from various disciplines, including music, medicine, music therapy, and physiotherapy, providing essential musical and social support during sessions. In-person sessions include guest speakers on topics related to wellness, and we've had instructions online in areas such as therapeutic dance. I'm going to hand over now to Rochelle to talk a little bit more about some of the things we do with the choir and breathing.
Thank you, Jane, and hello, everybody. As Janet mentioned, I'm Rochelle. I'm a physiotherapist with Eastern Health. I work primarily in adult inpatient care, and I have been a volunteer with the choir for several years now. As part of my part of the presentation, I'm going to talk a little bit about what exactly my role is with the Better Breathing Choir and about all things breathing and singing related. So I thought we could start with just a very quick evidence review. There is a very wide breadth of literature on therapeutic choirs and the benefits for those with chronic lung disease. And I've just included a few quick examples here. We have seen in the literature that improvements in outcome measures and the quality of life with participation in a therapeutic choir are comparable to those found in pulmonary rehab sessions. And so the outcome measure that I mentioned here is the 6-minute walk test, and that's an outcome measure commonly used in assessment of respiratory capacity in patients with lung disease. And that just really demonstrates how much endurance that they can tolerate without becoming symptomatic and having to stop. There is evidence to say that participating in a choir is feasible and safe for those with breathing difficulties, and it does help in functional parameters and also to reduce levels of anxiety. And anxiety and stress are very commonly reported by anyone who experiences breathlessness or feels out of control in terms of their breathing. There also have been multiple studies to demonstrate an improvement in feelings of depression and an improvement in overall quality of life with participants in singing programs. And then there is also evidence emerging to support incorporating adaptive dance or movement into choir sessions, which is something that we have been experimenting with at the Better Breathing Choir. It does allow for increased opportunity for some cardio exercise, increased in coordination work, and also to address some balance issues, which we are seeing very commonly in patients living with chronic disease, specifically chronic lung disease. And as I mentioned before, it is really important to note that so far in the literature, there have been no adverse events reported. So it is important to reinforce that this is a safe activity and accessible to nearly anyone. I'm happy to share these resources or any other that I might have with someone who might be interested in reading a little bit more. So lung disease or any type of breathing condition can make singing challenging for a variety of reasons. Some of those might be on the nature of feeling short of breath, frequent coughing, decreased lung volumes and airflow, so the inability to take big breaths and to control the flow of air in and out, and then altered mechanics of breathing, which is something that we'll talk about in a little bit more detail in a moment. Quite often people with lung disease find that their accessory muscles, which are muscles in our core, our neck, and our chest that help us to breathe, we'll find that these muscles will tire quickly due to overuse or improper use, which makes it really challenging to control your breath while you're singing and also to maintain a good posture to allow for singing properly. It is also important to note in any type of group activity with patients or participants who have chronic lung disease that they may have supplemental devices that they might need to use. That might be oxygen tubing or inhalers. And quite often those devices might need to be used during choir, and that might have been considered disruptive in more traditional groups, but that's something that these groups are very much embracing. It is also interesting to note that it isn't necessary for patients to divulge any diagnosis they might have, but we do know that in the Better Breathing Choir, we have a mix of diagnoses present. Some of those might be COPD, as Jane mentioned earlier, asthma, emphysema, lung cancer, and also participants have disclosed that they have a diagnosis of Parkinson's disease. Most studies that you might notice have choirs that are focused more specifically on one condition, and that makes it a little bit easier in terms of development of the choir and the activities because you can really focus on what the limitations of that diagnosis might be. Since we have a very mixed group, We try to provide very general education and to allow options for participants to adjust activities or breathing exercises that we're using, depending on whether or not they might have those symptoms or not. And on that note, therapeutic choirs such as the Better Breathing Choir are set up in a way to accommodate common challenges related to breathing difficulties. So we have a primarily seated setup. As much as possible, we try to provide tables or upper extremities support to help people with their accessory muscle use and to support better breathing. We do take frequent breaks and opportunities for repositioning or water. We're very accepting of coughing, which is a common issue. And there are always options, as I mentioned, to adjust exercises or to adjust the phrasing or the number of breaths in a particular song. The good news is, given all those challenges, singing can help. So singing can help with all these challenges that we just mentioned, and the benefits of participating in regular breathing exercises can carry over into daily life. So there is lots of evidence to suggest that these programs increase your exercise capacity and pulmonary function. So the benefits will extend beyond choir. As Jane mentioned before, singing doesn't feel like exercise as opposed to some more formal exercise programs. And so it does contribute to the health by stealth effect. And so if something's fun and it's enjoyable, and quite often if it's social in a group, we are more likely to stick with it, and we would expect the same for anyone who would participate in choir. As I mentioned before, singing can help to reduce anxiety and stress associated with shortness of breath, and that this physical act of singing requires a participant to take larger breaths and to exhibit breath control, which really is exercise for your lungs and your respiratory muscles. And the added benefit of specific breathing exercises and education in these types of therapeutic choirs does make it even more beneficial. So singing does mimic the effects of a respiratory physiotherapy program and provides many of the same benefits, some of which I've already mentioned, such as managing and recovering from episodes of breathlessness, improved respiratory muscle function, more effective cough and better cough control, improved breath and postural control. It can help with issues with voice production, for example, in people with Parkinson's, and to improve respiratory muscle strength and muscle coordination, which is very important. So before we look at a little bit more specifically what we're doing in terms of exercise at the Better Breathing Choir, I thought we could do a very quick review of the physiology and anatomy of our respiratory systems in case anybody's not familiar. So when we talk about your respiratory system, it does include your airways, your lungs, your blood vessels, and it also includes muscles that are part of the respiratory system, such as your diaphragm, your intercostal muscles, which are the small muscles between your ribs, your abdominal muscles, and the accessory muscles, which I mentioned in your neck and chest. And so all of these parts come together to move air and oxygen through your body and to clear out waste, such as carbon dioxide. So what actually happens when we breathe? It's not something that we think about until it becomes an issue. As you can see in the first picture here, there are really two parts to the process of respiration. And it's important to know a little bit more about those before you start to begin an exercise program related to your breathing. So the first phase of breathing, or inspiration, is when your lungs inhale. And when that happens, your diaphragm contracts and pulls down. And that at the same time, the muscles of your ribs, the intercostal muscles that we talked about, and your accessory muscles contract to pull your ribs outwards and upwards. That makes lots of space in your chest cavity and would decrease the pressure so that air comes in. So that's the first stage, or in breath. And the second phase would be expiration, or when we exhale. In that case, your diaphragm would relax and the volume of your thoracic cavity would decrease. And when that happens, your lungs contract and air is forced out. So in that process, there are two types of expansion which are equally important to have a normal or a functional breathing pattern. And we're going to talk a little bit about those because those really are the focus of a lot of the breathing exercises that we complete. So the two types of expansion that I mentioned are diaphragmatic expansion and lateral costal expansion. I think it might make a little bit more sense if we actually had a feel of our own breathing patterns to help understand what I'm talking about. So if we are to feel our own breathing patterns and to look for these two types of movements that I mentioned, let's try first to feel for our diaphragmatic expansion. So I know we're limited by the view of my camera, but if you put a hand on your chest and a hand on your abdomen, if you take a couple of slow, deep breaths in and just really notice the movement under both of your hands, try to think about what hand might move first and what hand might move more as you breathe in and out as deeply as you can. So what you're feeling right now is your diaphragmatic expansion, and what you might notice is that the hand on your belly might move first and might move more, and that's what we would be looking for, but sometimes we're really not aware of what's happening when we're breathing. To feel for lateral costal expansion, or what you might hear called bucket handle expansion, if you put your hands on your ribs, your sides, and take a few more of those deep breaths as you sit up nice and tall. And what you should feel is that your hands are moving in and out, and it should feel like an equal movement on both sides. And that's the movement of those muscles between your ribs are really helping to open up your chest cavity and make space for big breaths in. So both of these movement patterns, like I mentioned, work together to make sure that we have an efficient and effective breathing pattern. And so if one or both of those patterns are limited or they're not timed properly, which is what happens in all kinds of breathing difficulties and lung conditions, we can develop symptoms like shortness of breath and fatigue, and that would make singing and many activities of daily living a challenge. So those are things that we hope to address with some of the exercises we complete at the Better Breathing Choir. So let's take a better look at what actually happens at Better Breathing Choir sessions. So our sessions typically include a physical warm-up, some breathing exercises, a vocal warm-up, and then singing. And then as Jane mentioned, when we were in person, we did have some social time, some tea time, which is everybody's favorite. Besides for the social time, the format of our sessions has stayed the same with our move to online. So there is instruction on breathing technique and breathing exercises, which really helps to differentiate the choir from more traditional singing groups in terms of the therapeutic outcomes. Music is chosen to tie in with our therapeutic goals. So consideration is given to participant requests, which is very important. And then we'd also give consideration to things like phrase length and tempo as it would relate to breath control. And then the musical leaders, like Jane and our volunteers from the School of Music, also identify areas in phrases where participants could maybe take an extra breath or take a break if needed, if they were finding that particular piece to be challenging. We have started to incorporate more movement, and some of that comes from the exercises we complete at the beginning of choir, and some of that comes from spontaneous or freestyle type movement in some of the pieces. So participants are given the option to add in that movement or not, depending on how they're feeling. And we did have an occupational therapist who was trained in adaptive and therapeutic dance come and work with us. And so she helped us to work on some choreography and chair dancing, and also to add some choreographed movement to some of the pieces that we were already familiar with at choir. So our physical warm-up and the breathing exercises we complete do align with the current respiratory physiotherapy practice, and it is in many ways does overlap with the pulmonary rehab program or things you might expect to see in pulmonary rehab. So just to break down our warm-up a little bit more, the warm-up at the beginning of choir usually takes about 15 to 20 minutes. So as I mentioned, instruction is given from seated, but there are options for participants to complete most of the warm-up in standing if they so wish. A combination of exercises are included, such as a general physical warm-up and stretching of the muscles most involved in the respiratory effort. We also include coordination exercises, and quite often we would incorporate things like chair yoga or examples from community-based exercise programs that are more functional. The volunteers at choir are trained to be sensitive to the varied abilities of our participants, and they would complete the exercises, both physical and breathing exercises, at a level so that nobody is participating alone. And that really helps to make sure that nobody feels self-conscious or feels left out based on their ability to participate. We do provide education and suggestions to apply the breathing exercises to daily life and to guide a home practice. And we do have a bank of exercise videos available on our website for participants to use so that they continue on with the things they're learning at home. In terms of the respiratory exercises, we do try to combine or include exercises to help address a variety of different breathing difficulties, because we do have people with varying diagnoses and issues in the choir, as I mentioned before. There is a focus on expansion and prolonged expiration, and especially as that relates to singing, diaphragm control, and maintaining breath quality. And we do incorporate techniques from pulmonary rehab and the current cardiorespiratory physiotherapy practice that can help with both singing and, again, managing symptoms of chronic disease, lung disease in their daily lives. So I thought maybe we could try an exercise as an example. So one of the exercises we regularly complete at choir is called square breathing, and it's a warm up, and it incorporates deep breathing and also mindfulness. And so what happens is, as we do some controlled breathing, we're going to visualize a square. So sometimes when we do this on Zoom, it's actually a rectangle and not a square. And you have the option to just visualize the shape, or what we'll sometimes do is actually trace a shape with our hands. So what will happen in this breathing exercise is each time you get to a corner, that would be a pause or a hold of your breath. And then each side of the shape is a slow breath in or out. So I'll give you an example and maybe we could try it together. So if we started in the top left corner of our rectangles and took a nice slow breath in, we would trace along the top. And when we get to the corner, then we would pause and hold that breath in. And then as we breathe out, we trace down the side and pause again. And we're going to breathe in and trace the bottom and pause for just a second. And then as we breathe out slowly, we come back to the beginning. So once you understand the exercise and the path of breathing, it really does become a little bit more of a meditation. So that way we're able to incorporate some relaxation along with some breath control. So maybe we'll go through one round together before we move on. So we'll start in the corner if you're tracing, and we'll take a nice deep breath in and run along the top. We're going to pause here for a second. And then as we breathe out, we're going to trace the side and pause. Another breath in along the bottom, a pause, and then a breath out as you come back to where you started. Lovely. Good job.
Thank you, Rochelle. I just want to say a couple of final words and then we've got time for some questions. If you thought you were a non-singer when you arrived today, hopefully now you'll rethink that. So you can sing at home, or better still, find a group that matches your interests and vocal and musical comfort. If you're already a singer, then keep singing. And if you're a musician with some leadership skills, then consider starting a singing group in your community to welcome singers of all abilities, to provide an opportunity to explore singing activities within the context of well-being. There are lots of resources available to help with this. I'm always happy to share ideas and information. And we'll just leave you with 3 quotes from different choir members that I've worked with. The first talks about the benefits of a health-specific group, the Better Breathing Choir, saying, "I think music groups for other people going through medical problems would promote their sense of well-being, help them feel that they're not alone, and would give them the opportunity to focus not on their illness, but on their enjoyment." The second quote speaks to hope for the future, and though written almost 2 years ago at the start of the pandemic, seems particularly timely. As they write, "Hopefully in the future, it will become safe for choir members to drift away from their computer screens and gather again in person. I believe if the whole world could gather like our choir and sing peaceful and joyful music, it would be a far better place." And finally, a quote that was written separately by 2 members of 2 different choirs that simply said, "Choir is a lifeline." While a pandemic may not be the ideal time to be advocating for singing together in person, online options are still available, and many choirs have now returned to in-person singing. So go ahead and embrace the idea of singing for your well-being. Thank you. You're muted, Janet.
Thanks, Jane. My mind is expanding as we're breathing. I'm like, wow, I got to join a choir. Before we go to the questions and the comments, we're just going to quickly give a shout out to Johnson Insurance. Johnson offers Memorial University alumni specially designed policies and preferred rates on home and auto insurance, as well as travel insurance. So there is a number there, or you can visit the web link for additional information. Now we are going to go to questions. We don't have a ton of questions yet, so please don't be shy. We do have a couple of comments, and there actually is one question Beverly Holtzman sent in, and I think she's asking, would singing be beneficial for people who are experiencing long haul COVID, or someone, for example, who's had a double lung transplant?
So I'm sure Rochelle can talk about the breathing aspect of that, but I will say that there are places now that are using choirs and singing for people with long COVID, including in the English National Opera in London had a program where they were working with people who usually are singing opera and have been working with people who have long COVID. But Rochelle might have some things she wants to add about the respiratory aspects.
Yeah, Jane, you're absolutely right. So there already are programs that are based on pulmonary rehab programs for people with long COVID to help with some of the symptoms, including shortness of breath. Absolutely. And the same would be for double lung trans patients. So there is, depending on what your symptoms are, there would be exercises to help with that, and to the same effect, singing. Absolutely. You just have to, of course, make sure that you're working within your own limits. But I think there really is an opportunity to adjust and adapt singing so that it could work for either of those situations.
Okay. Just wanted to mention a couple of comments. Hannah says, amazing presentation. Thank you, Jane and Rochelle. I direct the Stella's Circle Inclusion Choir, so that really resonated, no pun intended, haha, with me. Love the breathing demonstrations and exercises you showed, Rochelle. We focus on breathing in our choir as well as from a singing perspective, but also because it can be very regulating and calming. She says she's definitely going to try out those breathing demonstrations and exercises at their next practice. Renia is in Kingston, Ontario. She says that she uses singing as part of the trauma-informed ESL training she does with refugees. She's drawing on the repertoire arranged and compiled by Georgette Fry in Kingston, Ontario. Maybe Renia's not in Kingston, sorry. The type of music we sing in Shout Sister Choir encourages rhythmic music. Most lyrics represent themes of peace, love, and understanding. We draw a lot on music written by Canadian musicians and composers, but also songs made famous by artists such as Aretha Franklin, Ann Peebles, Mark Knopfler, and the Andrews Sisters. The range is extensive, no musical training necessary, and members have been able to get off their medication after a year of performance training. And there was another comment earlier from Elaine. She says that her mother was at the Agnes Pratt home and ended up stopping eating, and she died. She was 5'11" and she died at less than 100 pounds. But she says that when in their home there were a lot of singing, and she knows of someone in Ontario who goes into a long-term care home and volunteers in helping others with mobility. And she's wondering about are there any volunteers that could be potentially organized to go into long-term care homes or that would help with mobility as well. And she says she sings in a choir and finds it very helpful for herself. I'm just going to check. Here is someone who is Carolyn, who is a senior high school music teacher, and she's very interested. And she also teaches a music class for their Center of Excellence, which is students with varied needs. Do you have any particular song suggestions that you have had success with for younger members? That's a great question.
Oh, I think that I don't know whether I have specific suggestions, but I think that really thinking about the group with whom you're working and thinking about some of the goals you might want to have for that particular group, whether it's motivation to do something or songs that maybe reflect some some of the goals that you might have of the group, or the type of message that you want to convey to other people. So, often, like I know with Louder, the group has used songs that really reflect the strength of that particular group, and showing other people what children in that diverse group can actually achieve. And I know with the Better Breathing Choir, we've chosen music that resonates with the group, because otherwise nobody wants to participate. If you don't like the songs, no one's going to sing. And so I think it's really important to just find some of those songs that resonate with the group, rather than particular songs being really suitable for the group, because they might not always work. I mean, with the Better Breathing Choir, we sing a lot of Newfoundland music, but choirs elsewhere may not be quite so enthusiastic about singing them, or simply not know them.
Great answer. Jeannie Tom wants to know whether the virtual singing sessions, I guess she means the Better Breathing Choir, are they available to people with lung diseases nationally? I can answer that.
Yeah, anybody can join them. The way in which we share the link is that anyone just sends me an email, and then they join an email list, and we send out a Zoom link before each session. So it's not posted publicly, but anybody can join. And we've had people joining from other places, and there's no cost to doing that. So if anybody's interested, they just need to send me an email and they can join those sessions.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I have put the link to the Better Breathing Choir's website in the chat, and I'm sure your email is probably in there. Is it, Jane?
Yes, it is. And it's on these slides as well, if you're sharing
Yeah,
those at some
exactly.
point.
Colleen is thanking you both so much for this, and she says it's wonderful. She wonders if there is any desire for your participants to continue online, or are they all looking to return to in-person singing?
That's an interesting question. Actually, Rochelle and I wrote a paper about our move to virtual sessions, and we asked people some of that. And I was quite surprised that we do have a couple of people who are keen to remain online for various reasons. And actually, one of the reasons why we will continue offering some online sessions is because people with mobility issues, or people with lung disease who might not want to go out in the winter, and also the weather here, we had to cancel so many sessions when we were in person normally, that the online sessions have allowed us to continue doing that. So there's a mixture of people who would like to remain online and those who really miss the in-person sessions. So yeah, I don't know whether Rochelle wants to add anything to that.
No, I think you're quite right, Jane. I think the idea of some type of hybrid model where we could offer online and in person, like we've discussed, is probably the best of both worlds.
Just letting Callista know, yes, this session is being recorded, and we're going to be sending a link to the webinar out in that email. So everyone who registered will receive a link to this webinar, and feel free to share it widely. Here's a comment from Doreen Noseworthy. She says she goes into many retirement homes to entertain and motivate people to join in. She finds doing songs that they know from their youth are the ones that get the most response. They absolutely love it. And here's Beverly. But Beverly, Jane told you at the beginning, everyone can sing. Beverly is saying, for the choir, do you need to have a voice for music? I can't carry a tune.
Actually, it's a shame that I didn't put up some of the quotes that I got when I did a study about the choir early on. And one of the comments that came up a number of times was that they enjoyed singing even though they couldn't carry a tune. It's not a requirement. And one of the wonderful things about singing in a group is that there's probably somebody next to you who can carry the tune. And so the sound of everybody singing together, it doesn't matter if you can't carry a tune. You just need to be willing to sing, because if you don't sing, there are no benefits to your breathing. So you sing whatever note you like. My mother used to pick her favorite note and just sing that all the time. So it doesn't matter what you do.
That's great. I don't think we've got, oh, here's a question. Oh, it's another comment, but it's great. Quite coincidentally, during this session, which has been fabulous, Choral Canada launched its hashtag Benefits of Singing campaign. We are so on target, aren't we? check it out. And then that's Kai or Kay. She's popped that link in the chat as well. So that's wonderful. Thank you so much for that. Yeah, we're very cutting edge here at MUNalum 101. Anyone else? If we have any, I think that's, we are at 157. So I think that might be it. But I really, we have learned so much today. I just thank you both so much. It's gone by so fast. I'd like to sincerely once again thank Dr. Jane Gosine and Rochelle Ryan for their time and for sharing this incredibly important information with us. Jane and Rochelle, any final things you'd like to say or add or tell people?
Thank you very much for having us.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. And I just encourage anyone and everyone to try and join a group and do some singing. Fun way to improve your health.
Absolutely. So thank you all to everyone out there for attending. If you enjoyed today's event, please check out our alumni website for some upcoming events, including Memorial's inaugural Reimagining Leadership Conference. It's a conference about women's leadership happening on June the 16th. And we've also got our Coastlines event is happening on May the 11th. That's with Michelle Porter. Whale of a Day at the, so it's a family day, so everyone can check out the new whale skeleton, which is incredible, at the Core Science Building. And thank you so much. As I indicated earlier, we recorded this session and we'll be sharing a link in an upcoming email. Thanks again. And everyone, I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.